Goodness. It's taking too long.
All right.
There you go. Okay, finally. Hello, everyone. I'm glad that you're here. As you can see, our chef is having some cooking in the meantime. Feel free to do your to-go order. We have a plethora of food in the menu. Just order whatever, and George will take care of it.
Yeah,
Um,
you got the 2-for-1. You got Philosophy Club, or you can turn it into George's cooking show.
Call it food for thought.
Food for thought. I love it. I love it.
All right, so yes, thank you so much for being here. This is our first meeting for the summer. My name is trying to direct the conversation today. I see many faces who are new, so welcome. I'm confident that you're gonna like the dynamic that we have since it is an informal conversation that tends to be quite funny, I must say. Yes, I echo that. And yeah, we normally get some uh, very good thoughts to process after we leave this meeting. As you know, Mansi is our advisor. I will explain a little bit the house rules so we know how to like talk and so on, so you're not that lost. And then we just go with it. I don't know how confident you are with Teams. We do have a chat here, so if you know where the chat is, please click it. Normally, the way it goes is for us to have an order on who's going to be speaking first or last. We write an exclamation mark, and as soon as my computer reacts a little bit faster, I can show you how it is done. But you just write an exclamation mark, and that's it. In that way, all I have to do is again read the chat, and that's it. If you raise your hand, that's fine. But it's hard for me to know who did it first or last, or sometimes it just get messy. Um, yeah. Besides that, normally Mansi take care of the announcement, so I will just let that to him, and then we roll.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Bertie. So again, this is the first, as we just heard, this is the first of the summer series. So last summer we kept the philosophy club going strong. We called it Philosopher, like philosopher. So this is Philosopher Part 2. Again, the vibe for the summer sessions, in my estimation, is somewhat different because typically, there are less students enrolled taking classes. So we have like a smaller crowd for the most part. But again, that leads to perhaps more in-depth conversations insofar as everybody kind of gets to follow up with one another and there's more sort of direct interaction and there's less of like a queue as Fernando was explaining. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this summer once again being filled with some really great conversations. Yeah, even if it's a smaller crowd than what we're used to. Now, I will say this too. The meeting times aren't going to change. So just like in the spring, we'll meet Tuesdays, 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock. Same bat time, same bat channel. So yeah, set it in your schedule.
You said 2 to 4?
Maybe.
Okay.
No, 3 to 4. I said 3 to 4.
Yeah, 3 to 4. But it's gonna change to what? Oh, you don't know yet. That's one. Okay, you don't know yet.
I see. I see.
Yeah. Luisa is saying congratulations. I'm not completely sure for what, but thank you so much. Yay, you're awesome.
He wins so many awards. It's tough to figure out.
Okay. So, yeah, is that all the announcements that you have?
Yeah, and then I guess we can transition into the topic, which is a very interesting one. I think. I don't think the Philosophy Club has ever done this particular topic. Competition.
Yes. And I'm actually quite competitive, so I don't mind kind of starting. But yeah, but I do want to say it's not just regular competition as like I want to beat. That's not just it. Like we're trying to have a more broad aspect of competition. So whatever it is that it is in your mind right now is probably according to the subject. So it can be competition just about ideologies that don't necessarily try to win something, but you want to prove like this is better for a specific society or so on, and such and such. Well, of course, we have the most normal type of competition. It's like one team against the other, or sometimes it's just an internal war about like you trying to prove to yourself that you are like more proficient in something than somebody else. I mean, it can be very abstract, so feel free to just go and put your thoughts in there. But yeah, I remember that one of the questions we have is it competition really necessary for us to improve as a community? I don't know if you all, maybe you didn't receive that email. But like the reason why I bring this up is because if we go to certain uh, at least beliefs like the Buddhism, that they feel like the more you are attached to certain idea, the less likely it is that you're gonna be free of um, or able to achieve that kind of like illumination and so on. And part of it is to just accept how things go, and if you're not the best, you're not the best, and so on. But like they claim that that is supposed to be your kind of like ideology, but we still have, I mean, we're still very much driven to be the best version of ourselves. So I don't know how much, and I'm just gonna start like asking questions to all of like, does competition really make us better as a community, or just create a dynamic that at the end of the day just make things more difficult? Can anybody just really be a good competitor, for example? It may seem that it's a skill that you may have to develop because not everyone know how to compete healthily. Sometimes people, in order to win, they just destroy the other person, and then you go into the more immoral aspect of competition, which is I'm gonna beat you even if that is gonna destroy your life, and it's gonna beat you even if that's gonna destroy your friendship or whatever. Um, I see that somebody, I think it's Luisa, and Luisa, I think you're snacking, or I don't know if you're trying to speak,
Oh,
but
no, I'm snacking. I'll put it on mute. Sorry, I'm eating crackers.
no, that's okay. Um, yeah, because I mean, to some degree, then we can say maybe this is just a thought. I'm not stating that this is the truth. That maybe being a competitor is a skill that you have to learn. Like sometimes people are very good at being competitors, and sometimes you don't. And sometimes even people, the idea of competing against something like it scares them so much that they rather not. They just rather be like behind, looking how other people are competing, and it's like And is would that be wrong? Would that approach actually be like something that people should avoid because otherwise you're just too convenient, too comfortable with yourself, and you're not trying to improve? But again, do you actually have to compete to improve? I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of want to piggyback on that because I never really thought of it in the way that you just put it. Actually, is competition, or we could maybe say a competitive spirit, is that something that must be cultivated uh, for everybody? So another way to put it would be this: is like competitiveness its own, we could say, virtue or vice, or are competitions simply the arena, simply the occasion for us to employ our virtues or be exposed in our lack of virtues, which is to say that your strengths and your weaknesses come into play amidst competition. But competition itself perhaps isn't necessarily its own thing. Or is it? Maybe somebody could try to work on being more competitive, as you're saying, but even if it doesn't come naturally. I don't know. It's hard to categorize it, I think.
Yeah, indeed, it's hard. I mean, to me, it's always funny when people go out and say like competition brings the worst of them. But why? Like, why doesn't that happen? Like, why can't you just like try to not really let that go as easily as it seems to be? Um, I see that Nelson is mentioning a couple of things in the chat. She's saying, I think it is its own thing. Okay. And she edited and so on. But uh, yeah, that's another thing. If you don't feel too comfortable about speaking, you can always just type, and I will say it out loud for recording purposes. So your ideas are also there in the video, just so you know.
I
I
didn't want
mean,
to interrupt. I didn't hear the.
no, you're not gonna be interrupted at all. Again, you can always just, as Mansi said, just type an exclamation in the chat, and as long as you remember what you were trying to say, it should be fine. And I mean, don't be scared of getting the conversation a little bit heated. Like challenge us, compete with us. Yeah, I mean, for me, it's kind of the whole topic is. I have to go, but I will be back next week. Oh, I'm sorry, Efrain. I hope everything is good. Uh, yes. So, I mean, for example, like I have some people that I really, really like, but whenever it comes to competition, not so much. But there are other people who actually have become really, really good friends because of competition. Because normally, like, we both have the same idea of how competition should look like, and we have the same way of competing against each other. So even when we are like kind of like one is being beaten one time and the other way, like we actually like the dynamic, and it just kind of like pushes forward, and we are not kind of like going on like you suck. It's kind of like, hey, come on, try to do this. So that we are actually kind of like helping each other learn from each other. So it's a way of competition that at the very least I like. I see George has the right to the floor, so go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting topic. I've kind of got some half-baked kind of thoughts here because this is not something I've really thought about. One of the questions that stood out to me was, is competition necessary for a healthy society? And you know what? I'm having trouble imagining what society would be without competition in the first place. Like it's really hard for me to imagine, okay, here you got a group of people who are trying to do something and there's no like sense of I want to do it better than the other guy. Maybe it does exist though. Maybe the opposite of competition is cooperation, and maybe there's a society out there where everybody recognizes that everybody has their own unique gifts and talents and perspectives, and they just try to be the best them that they can be without it being a competition. I don't know. Can that exist? On the other hand, it is easy to see how competition, if it's done right, we make each other better, right? Because we're always trying to one up the other guy. I'm thinking of like the Olympics here. Would we really push ourselves so hard as human beings? Would we really push our bodies so hard if we weren't trying to win, if we weren't trying to beat somebody else? Third thought, as long as resources are scarce, there is going to be competition, period. I mean, that is unavoidable. Unless we have like unlimited resources and nobody needs anything, then we're always going to have competition in that situation. And I like what Manzi asked, is competition kind of the arena for virtues and vices to come out? I think it definitely is that. I don't think it's the only arena for that sort of thing. I don't think the competitive spirit should be categorized as a virtue or as a vice necessarily. I think it's more how you go about competing that either brings out virtues or vices. So I'd tend in that direction. That's all I got. I don't know, to what extent can cooperation and competition coexist with each other? Are they mutually exclusive? What's the deal there? I don't know.
I mean, I guess sometimes it can even correlate. Sometimes you compete as a team, so like you have to collaborate to beat the others. Um, so I guess there is that, and sometimes like for you to improve, you actually have to collaborate with someone who maybe is not competing. So there are many versions of it, I think. But like whenever you were doing those thoughts, the first thing I was thinking is like I went as far as I could as a society. Whenever we were like a small group, like when it was survivability, like would they kind of like competing on who was killing the most to bring to the table, like some food? I don't know, you know. Like I don't know, like maybe they were just focused on survival and they weren't thinking who was best or not, as long as they were able to provide to their community. But maybe when it becomes a little bit more safer, they start like seeing like, okay, maybe the life of this person is more valuable because this person is able to kill more than the other person. So maybe, they start the competition, like who is more valuable to the community because they can provide more. Those were some of the thoughts I was having. But okay, Simansi has the right to the floor, so go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, both of y'all really, really awesome points you're bringing up. It's giving me a lot to think about. I kind of just wanted to sort of get back to this idea of trying to categorize competition, because it seems like there are different versions of competition. And if we want to get at like a precise understanding of what a competition is, then we can begin to understand what it is to compete, it seems like. So on the one hand, competition can be very, I guess, broad. I mean, you could say the survival instinct is us competing against the elements of nature. But is that really a competition, or is it just a natural course of things? You could be competing against yourself, as Fernando brought up, and as George was bringing up with the virtues and vices. So you could say, I'm in a competition with myself. But if nobody else is aware of it or really knows it, is it, again, like a true competition? It seems like for a competition to be, I guess, official, it has to be something like a contest, where everybody involved is on the same page. Everybody is pursuing perhaps one single objective. I don't know, win the World Series or something like that. To get back to the team element of competition. When you have that, and when you have sort of rules and ways to proceed in the competition as you're competing, I think we could get to a more, I would say, explicit understanding of, well, everybody knows everybody here is competing, and everybody's competing for the same thing. Now let's see how these individuals go about attaining their prize, attaining their goal. And I think that's when you get to see elements of a person's, attributes or lack thereof. But I think when we use competing in other ways, we're kind of just being metaphorical with it. I think it's kind of just like we're used to putting things in terms of competition, but that doesn't mean everything is a competition. Does that make sense? I think there needs to be a mutual acknowledgement. Because look, maybe you're competing with your friends and your friends don't even know it, So you're competing without a competition. It seems a little weird. It seems like a bit of a illogical element to it. But yeah, so that's kind of what I wanted to get at. Again, just how loosely might we use the term competition, and can you compete without there being a competition?
Okay. Yeah, I like those thoughts. I see you, Chase, next, so go ahead.
Hey, great conversation. I'll pick up where Professor Manzi left off. See, if you take, so to understand my point, I'll take you to the root word of competition, which is derived from Latin, I believe, and it's competitionem. Correct me if I'm wrong if you speak Latin or if you've taken, but it means rivalry, right? And any form of rivalry, whether it's internal or external with a team or singular, it's a fight to survive or do better, right? That's where we derive the word competition from, to compete. And whether it's instinctive or not, it's still that you have to go against something that is equal to you or more powerful. So for example, let's take internal competition, as Fernando said, right? You have to, for example, I think it was George who said about vices and everything. So you are competing with yourself to maybe not have that one drink, to maybe not smoke that cigarette. You are in rivalry of yourself. So you are your own rival, right? So you split yourself into two mindsets where one wants to give into the vice and the other doesn't. So that is as simple as a competition can be. And if you look at it even at a grander scale where two teams are competing, they're fighting for one thing. In your internal competition, you are also fighting for one thing, which is control. When it's a team, for example, a sports team, right? You're fighting for a championship, a medal, a title, or something of sort. And I think competition is inherent in any form of life because it's never a learned behavior, right? And I think that's something that we can agree on since the moment a baby is born, and if you have siblings or if the baby has siblings, competition starts right away. I mean, even before birth, you are involved in the greatest race of all time, trying to, sorry, trying to be born, right? And then the action of being born is a competition in of itself, because you could die at the time of delivery. So that's another thing, and it's found more in children than it is in adults. The sense to compete for attention, because if you have or grew up with siblings, you know that it's usually the younger ones who create a fuss about everything, who snitch and complain about the littlest things and stuff like that. They do this wide, not out of envy, not out of a grudge, because they want the same attention that the parents give at that time, right? Because if a child complains, the child has a parent's full attention that, okay, my child is complaining, I need to give them full attention to properly understand what is hindering them, what the complaint is about, and whatever have you. So, in my opinion, at least, it's more than a learned behavior or something like that. It's more instinctive, because in child behavior, especially, I'm going to talk about child behavior a lot because my mom is a child psychologist, and I have a buttload of books at home that I read in my free time for that. So, in child psychology, it is inherent that children who are born with siblings do the behaviors that I've just explained, and single children tend to fight for the same attention but with different resources. So all the troubled children that you have, maybe they're disrespectful, they're loud, they make a fuss, they throw tantrums, they throw stuff around or whatever. All they're doing this for is attention, because they think they need to compete for their parents' attention. For example, parents spend a lot of time at work, their own marriage problems, TV, whatever. And the child thinks that, oh, I'm not getting enough attention. So I'm going to do this so I can be a good competition for that set amount of attention that my parents can give me within the 24 hours.
Okay, very good points. Um, yeah, I know Nelson is with the floor, trying to get the floor like from sometimes. I'm not gonna try to add too much so you don't forget your topic. So go ahead, Nelson.
Thank you. You guys can call me Tia, by the way. Hi, everyone. So, at first, I thought that competition is definitely a learned behavior. And the only reason why I felt that way is because he gave the example of like children, how they semi naturally compete against each other. But I feel like that's a behavior that's kind of learned from the parents, it's learned from the other children. If I have three children, however, I give all of my children the same type of attention, the same type of love, then what would they be competing for? What would they be competing against? Um, so that's as far as it being like, I feel like it's learned. Now, maybe you can inherit certain things and be born with maybe a small percentage, but there's a lot of people out there that are not competitive, like whatsoever, like not even with themselves. So that's why I spoke on that part. But as far as I think it was Mancy that said it, as far as to compete without a competition. Is there such a thing of it, so to speak? And I think that competition means that there's like a reward in the end, or there's something that you retrieve, so to speak. So that means that everything is a competition, literally. You have to learn to survive. And you have to learn that, okay, like somebody gave the example with competing with yourself. Okay, if you were not so smart in high school and you want to be smarter in your adult ages, then you are competing to be a better you naturally, or you're learning to be better you. You learn from your past mistakes so that you can be better, so to speak. And then um, one of you said that, is it still a competition if the other person doesn't know that you're competing against them? And I think that, yeah, I don't have to tell someone that I'm competing against them, because then that gives them the upper hand in the competition. Regardless if they know, it still gives them an upper hand. If someone I know, let's say I value education, and they have a master's degree, and I'm okay, well, I'm going for my doctorates. Like it doesn't mean that that person has to know that. But if I tell them that, let's see, they're definitely gonna, well, let me go get it then, if they actually want to compete. That's pretty much it.
All right. Thank you, Ty, for. Is it Ty?
Tia.
Tia?
Mhm.
All right. Thank you, Tia, for your marvelous input. All right. So now is the time for George. Go ahead. Talking on definition of competitions and so on.
Yeah, definition man here, ready to strike again with another definition. Manzi suggested that we should narrow down, okay, what is competition before we start like talking about it. So here's my attempt. Competition is a struggle against an other for the purpose of obtaining a limited resource or status. So I tried to be flexible, right? You can struggle even against yourself as this other part of you, like Yusha was saying. Or you can maybe struggle against nature, although I'm a little less sure on that one. Or you can struggle against another team or another person. And here's the other key thing. It's for obtaining something that is limited. All right. So in the case of athletic struggle, right, there is only one gold medal. It is a limited resource. And in this case, it's a status, being number one, right? So the two, or however many teams are competing, it's a very limited resource or status. I like what Tia was saying. You know, if a parent shows all their kids equal love and attention, they don't have to compete because the resource, all right, the parent's love is not limited in that case. Now, that is an ideal. Can a limited, messed up parent actually give all of their kids perfectly even love? I don't know. I don't know. But the point is that if the resource or the status is unlimited, the competition evaporates. It's no longer necessary, right? It just ceases to exist if everybody gets, you know, the same resource, the same status. There's no need to compete in that case. Now, I will add to that definition because Manzi also said, you know, maybe we should talk about what kinds of competition are there. And I would say that if we're going to go down that road, it runs on a continuum. Okay, so imagine a line. On this end is the competition for survival. So very brutal, like there's limited food, limited shelter, and it's me and my people who are going to live, or it's you and your people who are going to live. So there is a competition, there's a struggle for life. So that is the most brutal, primal, I'd almost say, like, it seems evil to me. It seems evil because, you know, ideally, in a good world, we would not have to compete with each other to live. That seems bad. On the other end of that continuum is something you might call constructive competition. And I would say that constructive competition is less geared toward resources and more geared towards status, in the sense that people are competing, but over and above the competition is an overarching goal that everybody in the competition shares. So the members of a society, for instance, might compete with one another to see who can make the best technology or come up with the best way to feed all the poor people, for example. All right, so in that case, they are competing with each other, right? They are trying to innovate. They are trying to one-up the other person for that status of being the best and most helpful. But everybody shares this overarching goal of improving society. All right, it's the same with sports, I think, in an ideal world. Sports, right, the overarching goal is let us see how awesome the human body is. So they compete with each other, right? They fight. But the overarching goal, and this is why you don't cheat, is to see how cool the human body is and to see that sort of thing. So cheating is wrong because you're undercutting that goal, right? In your effort to step on top of the other person. And again, that's fine. as long as everybody's on the same page. So I think it's that kind of a spectrum, right? Over here, you've got the nasty, brutal competition for life, and then over here is this kind of idealized, we're cooperating and competing at the same time. And I think that's good. I think that's a good kind of competition. That's what I got.
Okay, thank you for the cooking advice. Um, so yeah, something that you were mentioning is like if two people get the same or equal resources or evenly, if they will like compete against each other. And in my case, I think like maybe they do because as human beings, we always want more. So so the moment we kind of see to the other place, it's like okay, but this person maybe is not using those resources as much, and I want a little bit more. Then the competition may start. Um, that's something in there. And regarding of what Yusha mentioned on the parents that give equal attention, I mean, I'm not completely sure if they think that they're doing equally. They just as grown ups, as being more mature, I mean, as long as they really want to do the job, they can assess whether some people need more, well, some of their kids need more help in some areas and in others not, maybe. So they do that, but the children are not able to understand that. The children is just kind of like, I want the attention. Why you're doing that for this person, not for me? It's because that kid maybe don't need that much support in that area, but this person does. So I just don't think that they are like analyzing that. They just want the same that they've seen in another person because they're still not really extrapolating out of themselves. They cannot really think out of themselves, but just within themselves. So that's why it happens. Um, and I think it's going to happen regardless of what the parents do. I think. Um, oh well, that was just my thought. And I see that Nancy's next, so go ahead.
All right, yeah, thank you again. So many excellent points being raised here, and again, I love the spectrum example. I think that's a good way to look at it. I also really appreciated Yusha when you went back and kind of did the etymology of competition. Again, at least for Western civilization, early on, the philosophers, specifically, especially again somebody like Aristotle is who I have in mind, but also Plato, the entire Greek culture was just permeated by competition. Absolutely everything was treated like a competition, like a contest. And the reason why that was the case, I mean, that's why the Olympics come out of the ancient Greek civilization, just like, plate writing competitions. So, not necessarily displays of the physical form, but also displays of the intellect and stuff like that. Now, this ties into something George said, which is why I bring it up. There does seem to be a rivalry element here, which is to say there does seem to be an other. Like you can't compete alone. And when I say that, again, you might want to say, well, sure you can. You can compete against yourself. But if you're competing against yourself, you're kind of othering yourself. You're kind of like, here's what I'm capable of. Yeah. And then here's what's actually happening. And so you're kind of creating a rivalry. You're dividing yourself for the sake of enhancing yourself. And so, again, I don't think it's a coincidence that people still sort of turn things into competition even today, just like they did with the ancient Greeks who did it more explicitly. It's because they felt that it's through competition that you're able to develop, that you're able to become more than what you currently are. And by identifying those people who really seem to win all the time, your heroes, the people your community celebrates. It could be, again, athletes who win a bunch of championships, or it could be people who do well in war, back for the ancient Greeks again. It does seem like, though, getting back to, again, Tia's point, that you need a society to value competition, for competition to have these beneficial results. That you have to have sort of a culturally wide buy-in into the idea that I ought to push myself. I ought to pick somebody in the field and see if I can keep up with that person. I ought to pick somebody in the classroom and see if I can score better than that person. That's this sort of, I guess, not an impulse, but this, I guess we'll just say an inclination to devise competitions because we understand that through competing, we're forced to work harder, we become better. But again, not everybody's naturally competitive. I think that comes down to maybe the family and the society and the values of the culture to sort of teach competition in a way that's healthy. Even if, again, to Yusha's point, we sort of are naturally competitive of scarcity of resources. Again, parents' attention, sustenance when you're a baby. Again, Freud talks at length about this. By the way, Yusha, I'd love to have your mom on the program sometime. If we're doing anything along the lines of child psychology, I think this should be a great guest. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm getting at here is this idea that a rivalry need not necessarily be a bad thing, whether or not it's natural or constructed. Again, Aristotle thought that that's how real friendships were formed, through competing with your family, in a sense. They become that. That's why you hear sports references all the time. They refer to the team as a family, as a band of brothers, or whatever the case may be. Because, again, ties deepen, you learn more about yourself, but that's only, and this is to my original point, and then I'll stop yapping, but that's only when there's an agreed upon standard of victory versus defeats. And everybody is okay with it. Everybody can compete equally. And then you earn the respect of your opponents. Okay, I'll leave it at that. I can go on, but yeah, I want to hear more from the queue.
Okay, thank you. All right, so I'm gonna continue reading. I'm gonna read what you just said. He said, see, you as a parent may think that you are giving equal attention to all three of your kids, but from the perspective of a child, it is not enough. Tia responded to make sense, but would it not be enough based on selfishness or based on lack of understanding that they are equal? Which you just said that he's going to talk a little bit more on that, and it's his turn to speak.
Yeah, so first things first, I'll come to Tia's point about parents' attention and selfishness. Yes, a lot of competition is derived from being selfish, but there's a very fine line between a healthy and a very negative and destructive competition, as George had mentioned. It's about, see, as a child, speaking specifically for child seeking attention. As a child, they don't understand that what or how much attention is enough, right? As a child, they just want to be with their parent 24/7, regardless of anything else, because they don't understand the value or the cost of being alive. And I say that very carefully because yes, you can be alive, but you still need to put time, effort, money, and everything into making sure that you stay alive, whether it's health, food, nutrition, happiness, and you can go into the pyramid of I forgot who's it is. I forgot, but there's a pyramid where it shows that it has certain levels. Let me look it up actually real quick. But yeah, the child does not understand, and at that point, we as rational adults see it as being yes, it was the hierarchy of needs by Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'm sorry, it's been a while. But yeah, as you could go into Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where he dives deeper into what each of these fields are. But just for the sake of this conversation, the very top would be self-actualization, and below it would be esteem. And at the third level, you have love and belonging. So as a child, you are naturally pushed into this kind of mid-tier of the hierarchy pyramid, where you, as a child, I'm talking about child, like not teenager, not an adult, as a child, you don't need to worry about about physiological needs, which is food, water, shelter, clothing, and that kind of stuff, because you believe your parent is responsible for it. Then from the bottom, you have safety needs, which is personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. Again, you don't need to worry about it because your parent is giving that to you, right? So you already have these two securities. Now, the third security you instinctively compete for, whether you're an only child or whether you have siblings or you grow around other children in the family. The third step is, of course, love belonging, which includes friendship, intimacy, families, sense of connection, whatever. And this fight for attention, when it's positive, it stays within the family and in between parents and the child. But when it goes into being negative, then the child goes and tries to find connection and relationships outside of the family. And in movies, how you see that kids just completely disregard their family, but spend most of their time and give high regard to either their friends or their friends' family. Why? Because they're getting the attention that they need or that they want from someone else. So yes, it is a competition, whether we realize it or not. Your second point was giving equal attention to all three kids, but from perspective of the child, it's not enough. Makes sense, but it would be enough. And selfishness based on lack of understanding. Yes, from your perspective, again, it might be equal, but from the child's perspective, it's never enough. Only when they grow up, they realize that, oh, hey, okay, this is how it is. Now, coming back to the conversation. Hey, Fernando, can you go and check if someone else started another meeting? It shows I have two meetings here. One is this one, and someone else started another one. But yeah, coming back to the point, it's when competition is how do I put it? Okay, so and see, the basic definition of competition is already defined by George, which is the lack of the scarcity of either resources or, in this specific manner of speaking, its reputation or stuff like that, praise and all that. When it comes to that, you have two basic things, whether it's very primal and it's very natural, where you see in wildlife that okay, animals compete for food. You know why? Because it's survival. It's a competition to survive, and their end goal is to survive, right? When it's not natural and it's to prove yourself better, it becomes sports. And if you want to go into a bit older times, you had people who would physically train themselves to be better suitable for marriage, right? If you look at some older movies and documentaries and whatnot, the wealthier families would look into marry someone who's physically fit. And that again is a competition to survive, because if your lineage does not move forward, then you haven't done anything. And I'm putting that in air quotes because it's a very controversial topic. So that being said, for men, it used to be high physical fitness, and that's why most of them joined the armies. Look at the Roman and Greek armies, right? Then you have competition for women, where they had to compete to learn that, oh, hey, I need to be able to cook, I need to be able to take care of children, and blah blah blah, as older times. So there is always competition. Whether you like it, whether you don't like it, whether you are naturally competitive, whether you're not naturally competitive, by hook or by crook, you are pushed into it. So how exactly do you deal with it, right? And that's something I think I'll discuss if it comes up later. If not, then I'm here for a little while if anyone wants to go one-on-one. So I'll let I feel Miss Benton is after me. So yeah, you have the floor.
So I just kind of had a random comment, I guess. And I don't know if I have a kid who used to play sports, and I have friends with kids that play sports. So if you're not in any kind of experience like that, it may not sound familiar, but there's kind of there was a trend, I don't know if it's still taking place, the idea that when kids participated in school events, like, field day, or they played soccer, that every kid, that participated would get some kind of recognition, like everybody might get a trophy or everybody might get a ribbon or whatever. And I remember there being a lot of conversation about this. It was kind of controversial. And there was a lot of argument about what the value was in doing that. So if you every kid that played soccer that season, for example, whether their team won or not or whatever, got a trophy. Was that good in that it recognized every kid that participated and then they got positive reinforcement that way? But was it also bad in that you're conditioning people to think that even if they don't perform well or they don't win, that they deserve something or that they're going to get something anyway, and that might hinder, in this case, I guess you would say a child's desire or maybe kind of hinder them from setting goals or hinder them from feeling that competitive edge that might make them, compete a little harder. I don't know. So I'm not really posing a question, but I'm finding it, interesting because we're talking about different kinds of competitions. Another interesting story I heard the other day, I don't know if you guys heard this story. It was a kind of a real life Lord of the Flies situation. If you didn't read Lord of the Flies, you have these boys that end up on an island and they're competing literally for resources for survival, but they also kind of develop a hierarchy. Well, there were these, I think this was in the 60s and the story's getting a lot of popularity now. There were these 6 boys who, they were living off the coast of New Zealand or Australia, I think, and they left in a ship and the ship crashed and they literally ended up on an island and they were there for 15 to 18 months. And they kind of created a pact, granted there were just 6 of them, but that they weren't going to compete to the extent that anyone was going to die or they were going to look after each other. So they, and they all survived and they were found later, et cetera. So I think, depending on whether we're talking about competition for survival, which I think brings something out in us that is very different than competing, for example, to win something or get recognized for something. So I'm not really posing a question. I just find it interesting that, some kinds of competition are created externally and that, if we aren't competing, somehow we might die. And then others might depend on how much need we have for feeling superior to others or feeling recognized. And then also, I'd be interested to hear anybody else think if they think that recognizing people, regardless of what they did, is somehow detrimental to this idea of competition that creates kind of a healthy atmosphere of having people strive for more than they might strive for otherwise. Okay, there's my little 2 cents.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I see Yusha is trying to reply to that. Just let me read very quickly some of the chat things. And I also want to add some comments into it. So Yusha, you were saying that Mansi, please, whenever you want to have Yusha's mom coming up, just give him a heads up to see. Juan is saying that he thinks that the human instincts of selfishness create a natural drive to competition. Whether or not it's a good or drive, I think it depends on their environment or what they learn. And Tia is saying that recognizing everyone is fine, but having the same reward is not good. Okay, so you should go next, then I go, and then Tia, and then there is a comment from Orlando.
Hey, thanks for letting me go first. I'll just quickly come back to what Miss Benton said. 2 things I want to focus on primarily is, yes, the first one is about the nature of the football players or soccer in America, and them being recognized equally just for being there, and that actually can be seen in the aftermath. The very negative aftermath can be seen in competition shows today, because I think it was last week I was watching Next Great Designer by Ellen DeGeneres. It's a TV show on HBO Max. It's about competitors who compete to design the best furniture, the 100,000 grand prize and whatever. But it's a competition show, right, where you have to design furniture. And the only thing I could hear from the contenders is that, oh, I deserve it. I did this. Very selfish, very self-centered, and think that they deserve everything. I'm not hating on Americans, but this is a trend that I've seen only and only in Americans. They think that they deserve everything without having to fight for it. On the other hand, if you take a look at the Great Pottery Throwdown, it's a British British competition show where they have to design pots, pottery, and everything related to clay and stuff like that, right? Over there, you see competitors who are competing each other, encourage and help one another. They say they never have anything negative to say against one another. Now, keeping in mind that both of these shows might be scripted, they might not be. I don't know. Honestly, I didn't dig much deep into it, but the time that I did spend over in UK was much more pleasant. People were nicer. You know, everyone, the community really got together. There was no sense of selfishness, but I'm just speaking from personal experience here. And again, I'm not hating on anyone. I'm just saying what I've seen it. So between the two cultures over there in England, they believe that okay, we need to grow together. You know, I cannot do anything by myself, and if I want something, I will go fight for it because I don't inherently deserve it. But here in America, they yes, Orlando, I'm hating on you specifically. Um, but here in America, they're like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna sit on my sofa. I'm gonna throw my feet up on the coffee table, grab a beer and a hot dog, and call it a day without having to do anything. And then when anything goes wrong, I'll say, oh, I deserve that position at my job. How did you deserve it? You didn't even work for it. So this is the first thing that I wanted to bring back to Luis's point that it does bring the scenario that you were describing about the soccer teams. It does bring very negative after effects and aftermath because as kids, as children, they were told and appreciated for things that they did not do. If they did not do something good, they should not receive a reward. As humans, just like we train dogs, humans are trained as well since birth. And it's up to the training that defines of how they become when they grow up, right? So if you give them the proper incentive that, okay, you do something good, you get pleasure. For example, it could be additional pocket money, it could be new toys, whatever, you know, anything that brings the child pleasure. On the other hand, if you do something bad, it's going to end in pain. So this is something that we call a pain versus pleasure uh, training, I guess. I don't know how to put it, but it's a training phase of how parents actually interact with their kids. So it's a very interesting point if you want to go into it. And for the six boys, it was off of the coast of New Zealand. It was one of the islands under New Zealand's control, where the society was very oppressive to its persons. And those six boys decided that, hey, you know, enough of this oppression. We're just gonna go off and see the rest of the world where we fit in. So they took off. Their boat crashed. Their boat sank, and they ended up on one of the islands where no one was living there. So as you mentioned, they made a pact. They lived for I think it was 6 years that they lived without killing each other. Uh, they had they had developed ingenious farming skills, crafting skills, medical skills, survival skills, and whatnot. Until one day, a sailor, a captain, had found them, who was later killed for returning those boys to the island, and then those boys were punished. So there's a book, and I believe there's a documentary for it. I'm not sure, but there's a book for it definitely.
Okay, good stuff. I would add something very quick, also to what Luisa was saying. Well, I never actually got to experience the whole let's just participate and we win something. I never got that. I actually had to like work my butt off if I wanted like a single medal, so on. Um, but I have been exposed to competition my entire life. I'm not gonna lie. That's been every year something that I've been exposed in different sports and so on. And I do have to say that if you tell me back then, me as a kid, that everyone will win something, I wouldn't compete. That's my thought. Why? Because there was no drive, there was no rush, there was nothing that really inspired me to be the best. Because I mean, if all I have to do is sign up, then what is the purpose? I think that it is something that it is being implemented to help kids feel better, to not have like that sense of failure that maybe was something that was feeling before. But I would say that if you really want to motivate them to be better, you have to expose them. And also like there, I mean, whenever you lose and you don't get anything, if you really talk with the kids and let them understand that, yeah, that's what happened when you don't work hard enough. So next time, work more. Like they're gonna probably be more prepared that, hey, if whenever you have an upset in life, I mean that happens. You're gonna be better prepared to take it instead of just like, oh, my life is so hard. I'm not gonna do anything anymore, and they just like seclude themselves. So I think the competition to some extent also prepares you to whenever you fail because eventually it's gonna happen. It's gonna prepare you to take the hit and just kind of like build up and move forward. Um, if well done. So that's why also I believe that coaches are very important. Like many of my coaches or like professors that in the sport, like I really value them a lot because they were with me like the whole step. Like I don't know if I've talking with some of you on it, but like whenever I was like on like very competitive like in high levels, like they were also keeping me in check about like my ego. It's like, okay, you're winning a lot, you're not gonna compete in this tournament. And like now you're not gonna get to this thing. Like no, you're not going to this exhibition. It's like what? But I'm doing everything right. It's like yes, but it's exactly that's why because you also need to feel like that you're not entitled to everything. Like just like go back and like examine what you're doing. So like I do believe like if properly done, competition can also expose you to that negative side of you and be able to correct it. Which if you just give them everything, they're gonna eventually feel like they have to receive everything in life. And guess what? Sometimes there's only one spot, and you cannot. Not everyone can have that own unique spot. Um, so yeah, that's my thought. I'm not gonna try to expand much on it. I know Tia is next, but before you talk, let me read what Orlando said. He said, "In my opinion, competition is a product of the human condition, not necessarily that it is human nature. I feel like there are certain people who might operate on passion rather than a competition. An artist may seek to express rather than to do better than. I wonder is, can there be progress without competition?" Which we have been talking on it, but yeah. Okay. Uh, so Tia, you're next, then Nancy, and well, Orlando just saying that you should say it. Okay. So yeah.
So, on the topic that Ms. Benton brought up, I made a comment, saying that it's good to, give them some type of recognition. However, the reward should not be equal. So, it was brought up about having a rival can be a good thing, versus a bad thing. And like, as we have people in the world, there's always going to be someone that you are competing against, whether it's yourself, whether it's a relative, someone that's across the state lines or the country. There's always something that you are going to be competing for, whether it's that job that you're trying to get and the next person wants the same job, they have the same criteria, the same ambition. There's something that's there that's going to pick one or the other. So, speaking as far as like, everyone getting a reward or getting recognition, I think it matters on the age group. I think for little kids, you're trying to show them the positivity in competition. I agree with, giving them their kudos on the back for participating, for signing up, for giving it your all kind of thing. However, those who won, they need to know the difference in between participating and winning, because that's just my opinion when it comes to that. I mean, we participate in a lot of things, um, and I think that if we were younger and people kind of gave you a little bit more, for more recognition as far as like, good job for trying it. I think a lot more people would try more new things versus only sticking to what they're used to, what they know that they could probably, be good at. You know what I mean? And then, I think it was you, Castro, that mentioned failure. Um, I feel like people in general have been taught that failure is a negative thing, and it's not. Failure, you can bring positivity out of failure. You failed this time, okay, what are you going to do better the next time? What can you learn from this failure that will help you succeed the next time? So I think that kind of goes with competition. Someone mentioned as far as like you can be friends with the person you compete with the most. If you lost to your friend, you are paying attention to What may you lose? How do they train more than you do? What's different in their method that you don't necessarily have? If you're honest about it, at least. And then one other thing about the having a good versus a bad rival, I think it matters on fairness. Like, I think that was you, Monzi, that was talking about, hey, if it's bringing out the negative attributes of you, you probably shouldn't be competing or something like that. But as far as like, if competition helps you to feel good about yourself, you are worth trying this thing. You are worth winning the prize, whatever it is. Whether it is on scarcity, something that's very dramatic, or something that's the smallest thing as far as a self-worth. So those are my opinions on that. And then I think the bad portion of having a rival is when your selfishness is just kicked up to the max that you can get it. You want to win this competition. So just for an example, people that do competitions and they win like scholarships, or it helps their family out or something like that. Well, someone that already has a wealthy background, why are you trying to destroy the person that's right next to you that actually needs to win this reward? I understand if you're better than them, that's different. But trying to be selfish and find every way to make them lose, I think that's the bad part of having a rival. You already have what you need. You really don't need what you're trying to get. So that's my 2 cents on that part.
Okay, thank you. So next is Mansi, and we have a couple more comments. But yeah,
Okay, I'll just respond. Yeah, thank you. Really excellent points, and I really appreciate the example. I guess I'll just say this, and also responding to what Louisa said about the participation trophies. You know, I think maybe the benefit of competitions, like organized competitions for children especially, so like t-ball, even stuff like that, little youth soccer leagues along those lines. I think the reason why those things are so beneficial and so popular is because, and I touched upon this earlier, but I want to get more specific. It's tough to control emotions, and it's very difficult to maintain control of your emotions when you're young. And oftentimes you can develop habits when you're young of indulging emotions maybe too much, or you never really learn exactly how best to manage them. I think it's through these competitions, baseball leagues, farm leagues, whatever the case may be, where you learn how to deal with your emotions when there aren't really any stakes. So you do care about it, you get invested, you want your team to win, or you want to get, I don't know, first place in the swim race or something like that, whatever the case may be. The idea is that you have to learn what it's like to suffer defeat. Because one day you will suffer defeat in real life. It's inevitable. And also, Fernando's asleep. I'm singing him a lullaby. There he is. Also, you learn how to win well. Sportsmanship, I believe it's called. But that's to sort of prepare you for the real world, where maybe you don't get the job you're competing for, or you don't get the the nice car that you always saw yourself driving, and now you realize you'll never be able to afford it. Something along these lines. Like when real life happens and you are face to face with your emotions, you already know how to handle them, I guess is the best way to put it, because you learn how to handle extreme emotions in a safe environment on the soccer field or on the baseball field. So this idea of participation trophies, it is kind of worrisome, because I think the point of competing when you're young, you learn that it's not about getting the trophy. It's about the experience you have. It's about the fun. It's about feeling these strong emotions, just like it is when you watch a sporting competition and you're a fan. So it's really not about the trophy. I think if you're giving everybody a trophy and say, hey, this is what you're doing it for, and you got it anyway, it's really going to sort of throw off the whole function of competitions in a way that, again, I think directly leads to development, personal development, self-understanding, however you want to put it. So that'd be my response to that. Look, in my personal experience, again, I'm an only child, so I never grew up with any sibling rivalry stuff. That was kind of foreign to me. But I will say I once did get sort of a participation trophy. But here's how they did it, and this is why I'm bringing it up really quickly. It was at summer camp. So if you've ever gone to a summer camp, you go to different activities all the time. So basically, every single kid got like an award or a little trophy, but it was based upon whatever particular activity that they excelled in. So the point being is this: it allowed you to be able to distinguish, to give distinction to every single person. It's not like a one-size-fits-all trophy where I think that might be even worse. Because then the person's like, well, there's literally nothing that differentiates me from somebody else if we're both getting the same award, even though we have different ability levels or something like that. So I think that might be a nice way to sort of meld it. If you kind of want to increase, I guess, self-confidence, and still, I guess, have it symbolize something that is meaningful. All right. Thank you. Oh, also check us out on social media if I forget to do that later. We're all over the place. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all that good stuff. Philosophy Club, DC, PC.
Okay, so did Nancy already stop stalking? That's a good nap.
Just like when you were in class.
Yeah. All right, so other comments that we have here is Orlando. He's saying, have we mentioned that certain individuals may be more prone to be competitive due to the genetics? If you are more competitive, does that give you an advantage over people? Not necessarily, but I can see the point. So for me, even if everyone wins, getting a participation award never felt good. Even if I didn't try that hard to win, getting a basic "you tried" reward sometimes made me feel even worse. I think that the learning from failure scenario you describe has more impact if nothing is actually gained. Okay, so there you go. That is all for now. We're already over the hour. I don't know if there is any other comment, but yes, please check us on. We're basically everywhere. We have YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We have everything, so just check us out. We try to be as consistent as we can with our posts out there. Yes, if you want to be added to our mailing list, just send me your email. That's the best way to do it, so you can have access to it. And I think that's about it. The screenshot, lol. Not completely sure what type of screenshot. I'm guessing for extra credit.
Yes,
So
that's
mm,
correct.
okay.
There's a class that we're taking, and that's a part of it to make sure that you do that. I actually enjoyed the class though, so make sure that part's known.
All right. So I'm glad. So LOL. That's basically it for today. I think I may just end the recording. So beside that, thank you so much again for being here. We're gonna be meet next week again. We already basically have the topic already. We have to work on the wording, but it relates to like how would it be life without feelings?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Be
Stay
better.
tuned.